Liz Cloke is the head of secondary at Tenby International School on the island of Penang, Malaysia. She began her career as a PE teacher and has moved up the leadership ladder with an attitude of taking every opportunity that is offered her way. She is passionate about stepping outside your comfort zone in the quest for continual improvement. Liz is an advocate for sport as a tool to expose students to leadership. She will talk today about her own journey of captaining her basketball team at school to working with inspirational leaders throughout her career and how both of these has shaped her own skills and values. So Liz, welcome to the show, and Portsmouth to Penang. Tell us a bit about that journey.
Hi, thank you for having me on this morning. Before I do talk about Portsmouth to Penang, I just want to say your podcast has been fabulous. I've been listening to it since, I think my first one last September with Ian Death was my first one. And I picked up, I met Ian on my PE journey in KL, but picked up a really good point from him, which was about being having a positive start to your meetings, which I stole and use to this day in my SLTs. And then the other podcasts, just some memorable ones, because it says about learning from it and taking inspiration. Steve Salis, how could I forget him? Fantastic, talking about, I can't remember, was it the D class teachers? He never wanted to, was it D class? Yeah. So entertaining podcasts. And then just recently, just last week, I listened to Mike Gilmore and he was talking about his book and the power of rapport and sort of going a deeper level, I suppose, in what I'm all about in terms of the connection side. So really interesting podcast. So thanks for the series and looking forward to more.
Thanks very much, Liz. That's very kind of you.
So my journey from Portsmouth to Penang, well, actually, my upbringing was in Basingstoke in Hampshire. Some people are going, oh, but I was there from the day I was born, and I won't start there because that will bore everyone by the time I get to my past 40s now. But I was really lucky because our family home was very close to a sports complex. It was a quick ride on my bike, 10 minutes in the car, the long way around. But I was fortunate enough as I was going through sort of junior school to find a love for sport. And I even remember being the PE cupboard monitor at junior school.
Oh, I tell you what. That's quite a title.
Should be on my CV, shouldn't it? So I always had a love of sport, even then, and got involved with playing football down the park with the boys. And as I got to the end of junior school, I was running and jumping and throwing at the athletics club at the sports complex. So we'd head off there, and my younger sisters too. And then as I got to secondary school, there was it opened up to more sports, more activities, and I just absolutely loved it and found a real passion. It got to a point where I was going for the trial for the basketball team, and it was girls basketball at my school that was massive. It was huge, and that's what Richard Aldworth was about, basketball. And it was a teacher who I'm still in contact now. I think he's recently had his 70th birthday, but he was the head of special educational needs at the school, so nothing to do with the PE team, but he ran the girls basketball team. And there were girls that were above me in year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11. Well, it actually was called first year, second year back in those days. But I remember watching the girls training at lunchtime and wanting to be what they would do or do what they were doing. And there were girls that were training at lunchtimes and representing the school team, who were also representing the county, Southwest England, and also the England teams as well. So they were sort of my aspiration and inspiring for all of those girls that were going to those trials. Anyway, I got through the trials, and I ended up doing pretty well, and I was playing above my age groups during my school sort of career. I got selected for Hampshire, the county team, and then I also got selected for the Southwest England team. And through my love of sport, And I suppose just watching and learning from others, I was captaining the school, captaining not just the school team, not just the Hampshire team, but also the South West England team. And we went to Lilleshall National Sports Centre to play against the other regions. And that was where I met, you know, the creme de la creme, if you like, of the girls playing basketball at that time in that age group. And it was, again, like really eye-opening in terms of, I want to play like them, I want to be like them, I want to be able to lift that trophy. We didn't quite win the trophy. I think we came third out of the 4 in one of the years that I went. But from there, you got selected to play for the national team. So at that point, I was still at school. I had then, just after my GCSEs, I'd got, not scouted as such, but there was obviously lots of connections between the basketball coaches across the region. And I was then asked to travel up to play National League, which was my nearest club, which was Spelthorne Aces, just in Middlesex. So I was travelling up and down the M3 twice a week for training, and then also to play on the weekends, and that could have been anywhere across the country. Again, stepping up to that level, I was meeting and connecting with other girls who were very inspirational. My team at Spelthorne, we had the captain who was also the England captain at the time. She, you know, worked hard. She, you know, got everybody else motivated to play their best, train at their hardest, train at their best, and it just kept pushing. So I ended up going to college, but college was sort of masked a little bit by too much basketball, perhaps. And that didn't go quite to plan in terms of the A-levels, but we can come back to that, and I don't mind sharing. And then I was playing under 18 England and under 23 England, and I was in the squad there. So again, lots of traveling around the country, playing with and against some fantastic players. Some who were looking at scholarships to go off to America, it wasn't my dream, but that was like, wow. And then when I got to the end of my A-levels, I had a slightly different path because of those results. And no regrets whatsoever. I didn't go, I had Loughborough and I had Brighton University, but down at Eastbourne to go off and study there. But didn't quite work to plan. And I ended up having 3 years before I went to university. And in those 3 years, I think it was Phil Math that you interviewed just recently, who was to do with paper sales. Well, I ended up doing I was a paper consultant, whatever that means. But I was a paper consultant. Before I was a paper consultant, I went into being a fitness instructor. So straight from college, I got over the tears and, oh my gosh, I'm not going to go here or there. And I wasn't going to go through clearing. And my parents said, redo your A-levels at night school and, and go and get yourself a job. So I went off to, word of mouth. I ended up being a fitness instructor, doing all my qualifications there. I was doing boxercise classes, personal training, aerobic circuits. Which I loved, but at the same time I was still playing basketball and doing night school. Well, the basketball was on the same night as my night school, so I used to go to the start of the night school at the local tech college, and then I used to slope off at the break and go and play basketball. So I hope there's none of my students who are listening to this. But then it got to the point where I was doing sort of shift work and it wasn't particularly sociable. It was really taking its toll in terms of I was doing the early shift on a Saturday and then trying to play National League, and it was just, I was tired. And so I then carried on part-time with the fitness instructing and the circuits and the aerobics, and actually earning more money than what I was when I was doing it on a full-time basis. But then I ended up being a paper consultant, working 9 to 5 on the phones, speaking to printers, speaking to designers. And I was about 1.5 years into that, and I was just like, no, this isn't for me. So I wanted something different. I didn't want to be sat at a desk all day. And I went to university. I was at Manchester Met, Cwm Headteacher, which has got a fantastic reputation for PE teaching, although that's not what I did. I did business management and sports science to start with. And then it was only during my sporting interests. I was playing football for Cwm Headteacher. We were beating Loughborough, they were the top team at the time. And I was playing basketball as well. And it was only sort of hanging out and playing socially with those teams that there were loads of PE teachers that were there, and it was just their course sounded fantastic. And I suppose back at school I was inspired by my PE teachers, and my love of sport sort of took me through, but it was always something that people had said, you'll be a PE teacher, you'll be a PE teacher. And I was like, no, I'm not. But I didn't actually know what I wanted to do. So it was only towards the end of my degree that I decided that I was going to pursue a PGCE in secondary PE teaching, which is what I did after I had a quick round the world trip traveling. And so it was 4 years before I started my PGCE, directly after, about that anyway. And then, I absolutely loved it. I was at Chichester University down on the south coast doing my PE teaching, had a couple of great placements. And then my first actual PE position was at a fantastic school. Well, I say fantastic school, tough school, inner city Portsmouth, but a fantastic department. And again, I came in and I was mentored and inspired, and I learned so much from those colleagues, some of who I'm still in contact with now. And then I suppose that was sort of the start. I did 4 years there, picking up loads of sort of tools, and I know others talk about a toolbox, but yeah, loads of stuff in my toolkit. Then I went off to Thailand for 2 years. I was given a sabbatical. So I got 2 years to go out and be a PE teacher at one of the international schools in Thailand. Went back after the 2 years, which was the right thing to do, but Thailand was fantastic. Loved every moment. Went back, did 4 years at the same school, although I would say it was a very different school. We had a different head at that point coming in, lots of staff turnover, and it was changing quite dramatically. But I had my opportunity there to step up into middle and then senior leadership in that time. Then I got itchy feet again, and it was after 4 years that I decided that it was either buy a house, get a dog, settle down, or pack everything up into, I think it was 7 boxes, and move to Kuala Lumpur. And that's what I decided to do. And here I am now.
Wow, what a journey. There's a book in that, Liz, definitely.
The world's most reluctant student and teacher, I understand.
Yeah, probably a few too many secrets coming out there. And I know you said brief, but the start from sort of junior school and talking about the sport, and I love PE teaching, and no regrets about going earlier, because I do think my travels around the world, my experiences in school, experiences in the 2 jobs that I had, sort of helped make me the person that I am, and helped me get that job in Portsmouth. Definitely, I've been told that since. More mature apparently, but just the life experiences that I could contribute to the job, and not going in straight from school to college to university to then a job. I had something about me which they liked, and
and then everybody's got their own story, Liz, and it's just lovely to listen to that story of where you've come from. It gives the listeners a real background into who you are, and I thought that was brilliant. I've just finished a book, and I don't know if you can't really see it on screen. I don't think it's called The Best: How Elite Athletes Are Made by Mark Williams and Tim Wigmore. And some of the things you talked about there just resonated completely. And I've just made some notes that I'll share. It's about failure driving success. It's about playing above or working above your age level. It's about accessibility and opportunity. It's about being around great coaches and inspirational people and playing with people that are better than you. And it talks about that in this book, how that's how successful elite people, not just in sport, but in life, are made through experience. And you've just talked about that there, and you touched upon values, Elizabeth. So how were your values created through that point? And just share with our listeners what your core values are.
Yeah, I've been doing quite a lot of I suppose research and reading around core values, and I felt at the beginning of my headship in particular 5 years ago, I was sort of forced into, you should have core values and you should know this. Well, actually, more recently in the last year or so, I think I've cemented my core values, and the two, and to be honest, going back, even if I hadn't written them down and cemented them, they still are my core values even back then, which are to do with connection and also discovery. So the discovery of learning, the discovery of new places, the discovery of different people, and then the connection side of things is about myself, it's about colleagues, it's about students, the parents, it's beyond school, beyond my school's group. It's going into Twitter and connecting further and taking those opportunities. And all of the opportunities that have been presented to me have been connecting, but also allowing me to discover different things, different pathways. And that's where I am in terms of my core values.
Oftentimes the core values that we have are very much derived from those childhood experiences that we have and the things that were impressed upon us. So I'd be interested to know how connection and discovery really link back to that time, maybe where you were skipping your night school classes and going off to play basketball, or where you were playing with those elite basketballers, or where you felt maybe a little bit intimidated to start with, and then how they helped you move that on. Can you give us some idea of where they come from, those two?
Yeah, I mean, when you said about intimidation, when I first stepped up in, playing above my age group, and you've got people that are in your age group that are like, oh, she's playing up, and she's this and she's that, and that's something to contend with, and that sort of resonates, I suppose, in terms of going from teacher to middle leader to senior leader as well, and when you're working with the same colleagues and how they're going to perceive you and how you're going to deal with that situation. I think the connection side of things, again, stepping up into the next age group and then stepping up into National League, it was intimidating. I am a optimistic person. I am a radiator rather than a drain. I'm a smile rather than a grumpy face, and I'm consistent with all of those. And I think that has helped me connect with other people, and connecting with other people that are similar in terms of their hard work, their ethics towards life in general, talking about, celebrating their successes. When you're 2 points down in a basketball game and you're being taken off the court, but high five to the person coming on instead of you, and making sure that, I'm learning from the defeat and also the successes, the wins through the basketball team. And I think that brings you together, those successes, but also the failures too. And that can be together within a team, wherever you are, whether it's sport or whether it's in schools, or if something hasn't worked quite as you wanted it to, and you're reflecting on how you can get better. And there's a common purpose. In basketball, it was, winning, but also getting better every time. And for me in school, my driven purpose is about making sure that we're giving the best opportunities to our students, and making sure that the students are getting the best deal that we possibly can. And we, in 5 years, we've got better and better as we've gone through that process. And we will continue to get better by reflecting and, bringing different skills and making sure that we've got different skills, but the mindset is all about the students.
Yeah, and that idea of getting the best opportunities for the students, I think there are connections there in terms of what you've told us about your journey and taking opportunities yourself. And I'm really interested to know how you frame those opportunities. So the intimidation that you had when you went into those basketball arenas and those gyms and that hard work when no one was watching, and you're around bigger girls and stronger girls and faster girls and better girls. And then you talked, and I really like that idea of the phrase playing up being applied to you move from being a PE teacher into middle leadership, into senior leadership, and into being a head of school. How do you frame those challenges, Liz? How do you see those as opportunities? How do you see that that's something that you want to move forward with and that you want to make progress with without feeling particularly intimidated or without letting that get the better of you?
I think from past experience, when I was, I say, just a PE teacher, and I were no other responsibilities. I literally, when I was a PE teacher, I wanted to be the best PE teacher that you could possibly be.
Steve Salis would love that comment. Don't be rubbish. Oh, in fact, I don't think he put it like that. I think he swore in his.
That was my aim. And even now, I didn't have an aspiration to be a head of secondary. But I think the connections that you have and what you see and what you observe in schools and the opportunities that are given to you, and I'd like to say I was definitely not a D-class teacher. I wasn't rubbish. And I think when you have got other people around you that see your potential and see the opportunities that you would be good at, could take up, make a difference within that school, then they're going to give those to you. And it was even, taking, I introduced sports days. In a city school, we were very, very limited in spaces. I introduced sports day, which seems ridiculous, doesn't it? As a newly qualified teacher coming in, introducing sports days, but that's what I did, and it's still running with a few tweaks to how it was. God knows how many years ago, 17, 18 years ago, apart from obviously with COVID coming along. But there was also the assemblies that I ran that I linked and connected with my travels. So I shared, I remember stepping up, I'd done this presentation and I'd done my round the world trip, and I wanted to share that with my students. And I did an assembly with the year group, and sharing what you could do beyond the bubble of Portsmouth, and trying to see what you could do to expand other people's horizons, I suppose. And I think those connections there with other like-minded colleagues or like-minded coaches or players, it gives you the opportunity to be able to play up and prove what you can do, whether it's to yourself or whether it's to other people. And I still get nervous for assemblies, and I think that's caring. That's caring because you want to do the best job and you want to make sure that you get your message across. And
you don't want to be rubbish, right?
Sorry?
You don't want to be rubbish.
No, exactly.
you mentioned just then, Liz, that the others seeing your potential is important, and I think there's a hell of a lot of power in that. And you talked about wanting to prove yourself, but being around like-minded people that do it. How important is that environment for you to feel empowered and to feel like you've got the support and you've got people around you that really fancy you to go on and do well and really want to support you to do that?
Yeah, I think really important. I think hopefully that's how people see me in terms of giving opportunities. And I talk just in my blog that I wrote this week, talk about leading from the bench as well. And sometimes it's about talent spotting, isn't it? It's about knowing your strengths and your areas that you're not so good at, and being able to empower your team or individuals into getting them on court. And if you can get them on court at that moment when you need them to go out and step up and not win necessarily, but when you're talking about it in school context, that they are delivering, leading, but you don't have to, but you can still motivate, you can still inspire, you can still guide from the bench. And I think that's important. And I want to encourage our younger leaders or our aspiring leaders to step into those opportunities and try and develop a wider skill set, but also try to share with them. And it's a bit of vulnerability, I suppose, coming from me. It's that's how I feel too. And when people are stepping up to do an assembly for the first time, or they're stepping up to deliver in a parent forum that for the first time, that I'm also feeling a little bit like that, and that's okay. So it's, you know, I do go out there with an air of confidence, because you have to, but there's still self-doubt going on, and I'm trying to put that to the side, and it's, you know, one voice saying this and another voice saying that, and I think a lot of people have that, and it's about quietening that voice that is saying you can't do this, you're rubbish, to the one saying, yeah, you can do it, get out there in the arena, give it a go. And other people will hopefully be inspired or influenced by you to follow and do the same.
We're all selling something, aren't we, Liz? That's what was one of the common themes coming out of the last few weeks with Phil and with Mike. It's a really interesting concept, and you are almost putting on a face, aren't you? And you're getting up there and you're performing all the time. Now, I read your blog from this weekend. It's great, and you called it about leadership superpowers. Is that right?
Yeah.
You've mentioned one of them, Liz. You mentioned leading from the bench. You've got 6 others. You've got learning about you. You've got going beyond education. You've got being you and authentic, listening to others you admire, asking for help, and looking after you. Are they in any particular order, or are they just a mixed match?
Yeah.
Give us a bit more on those.
Yeah, I think I could have gone with a lot more in terms of what I have learned on this, particularly the last 5 years. It's been an incredible journey, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been insane at times, particularly in the first sort of, I suppose, first term, if not first year. And then particularly, obviously, same with a lot of other leaders, when we went into our first MCO last year. And that was incredibly taxing too, on, you know, leading, but also trying to get that balance of looking after myself. And maybe the number 7, I think, is my well-being, and, you know, looking after you. Maybe that needs to be number 1, because, as you know, many people say, you can't look after other people if you're not 100% yourself. So maybe that should be number 1. Yeah, leading from the bench, that was so it sort of coincides. I'm reading beyond education, and that's been a really good useful piece of advice that I've taken on. So the learning from or leading from the bench analogy came from Abby Wambach, the Olympian soccer player. And she was talking about leading from the bench, slightly different. I think she was on the Olympic stage at the time, so it wasn't quite me, but it was really interesting, and it made me think of what I had learned on my own sort of sporting journey before coming into the bigger arena as such, with the headship. And then, yeah, I think I've just finished reading a book called Playing Big, and that's been really interesting. It's actually talking, I'm gonna have to look see what it said, because my memory is terrible, but it's practical wisdom for women who want to speak up and lead, create and lead. And, you know, nothing to do with school, nothing to do with educational leadership at all. But it was, lots of it was reminders, practical advice, what I should and shouldn't say, which I've probably broken a few rules today already. But reading outside of education has been important for me. And Brené Brown has been a big influence, and I know she's been a big influence on other school leaders as well. But she has helped massively, particularly with my emotional intelligence, the EQ side of things, and rumbling with vulnerability, and not tapping out of difficult conversations, advising how you could go about a difficult conversation instead, but also driving with self-confidence and daring greatly. And she talks about being in the arena and taking feedback from only those people that are also in the arena. And when you are playing in front of however many people in the audience in basketball, or whether it is stepping up and leading a school, you've got people that are watching, listening, judging, and you can't please all the people all of the time, unfortunately. I'd like to be able to, and I try my best to, but that's a tricky one, and that's been a learning curve in itself, taking the feedback, thinking about or processing what I need to change in terms of or adapt or learn about in terms of my emotional intelligence, and moving forward. And that's been a big focus for me, well over a year now. So, and that's changed me as a leader.
We've been really fortunate in speaking to a number of female leaders across the episodes we've had, just the ones that spring to mind straight away that speak so passionately about females in leadership positions: Rebecca Russell, Anna Power, Melissa Jacob, Helen Owles, Julie Stern we've had on, and a number of others who really make a plea for females to take that plunge and to be brave and to have a go. What's been your experience as a female in leadership, and why is it that we don't see as many females in leadership as maybe we would want to, and maybe they're not fairly represented in terms of proportions at the moment? What is it that we need to do to really encourage females to take that plunge and to have a go at leadership? And why is it perceived that men find this quite easy, or that they have a better chance at leadership? What's been your experiences around those?
My experience has been really positive, I have to say. I have been, within my senior leadership team on our campus. So on our campus, I'm one of 4 schools. So I lead the international secondary. We've got an international primary. We've also got a national primary and a national secondary. And then we have a principal who sits over the top. So I know each school is quite different. On our senior leadership team, there's way more females than there are males. And before, when we had a male principal in Salis, it was the same. He was with all the ladies. Before that, it was very much male dominated when I first arrived in Malaysia, and I've seen quite a significant shift. And I think that is down to, in my schools group in particular, I think it's being more internationally aware. We've got some really good leaders who've come in, not just from the UK, but other sort of, we've got Australia, the UK, South Africa, who are really pushing through to make sure that we're getting the best person for that job. And it's, I read a lot in terms of the women who, when the job advert comes out, the women make sure that before they apply for that job, that they can tick all, let's say, 10 things on that job advert. Whereas the men will go, I can tick 6, I'm going to apply for it. And I think we've got to do the job in, you're nodding, Lewis.
Well, I'm just thinking, it comes back maybe to that sort of idea earlier, what you said of being in the arena. Is there an assumption from what you said, or maybe a perception from what you said of actually, it's just that maybe men historically have more of well, whether it's an opportunity or bravado or confidence, but more of something that says, well, I'm going to chuck myself into that situation, see what happens.
Yeah, quite possibly that. And I think it's up to us as educators to build the persona of women in leadership positions, and giving them the opportunities at school, and to make sure that they leave us confident to be able to take up any kind of leadership position.
Yeah, I can speak for Alan here as well. We've worked with some incredible female leaders, and it's framing it in the way that you did there of, you find the best person for the role, and if you feel like you can tick some boxes on a job description, go for it. And it's changing that culture moving forward, isn't it? And giving everybody the opportunity to say, well, it shouldn't matter of your gender, and it shouldn't matter of a number of other aspects. If you feel you're good enough, have a go.
Yeah, because it's also, again, listening to some of your podcasts, you're not necessarily looking to tick all the boxes with the skills. It's more of the mindset and your personality, and then you can mold everything else, and you can learn about the curriculum, can't you? And you can learn about X, Y, Z in a school, but you've got to make sure that that person fits and has those characteristics to be able to blend into that team, to connect with your community.
Yeah, for me and Alan, I think we're very much on the same page, that matters more than the sort of superstar CV or the qualifications and the experience. You know, once you get to that stage where you feel somebody's had enough experience or got those skills, actually what you're looking for is to look at the personal qualities and values of that person. And is that what you mean when you're referring to finding the best person for the job? You're not just trying to find somebody who fits in terms of knowledge and skills, but you're really also looking at that essential skills and essential skills set of how this person really interacts with others, how they work as part of a team, and what their personal sort of attributes are.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you know how difficult it is just meeting people on Zoom and through the interview process and recruitment, but that's the way it is, and you've got to find the best way to be able to recruit the best people for your job. We don't always get it right, but what we have done more recently is changing our interview process. So we've now introduced just a half an hour chat, very informal, getting to know them, they get to know us, and see what the connection is. And just so you can get a feeling for that person before you go into the hard teaching and learning side of things. Tell us about X, Y, Z, what happens in your classroom. It's making that connection. It's learning about their mindset. It's about trying to find out about their learning and whether they've got the same core values as you and the school, and before you get into the nitty-gritty of whether they can teach in the classroom. Obviously that helps as well.
Well, I love that idea, Liz, and we've talked about this a lot, haven't we, Lewis, about how we could change the interview process to find out about the human characteristics. Liz, give us some questions that you ask in that 30-minute slot to really find out about them.
Oh, blimey. Lots of open questions. Hopefully they won't chat quite as much as I have done today. Oh no, sorry, I'm not allowed to be negative about myself. I'll get told off for that. I think it's, oh gosh, do you know what? I haven't interviewed for over a year because this year we have had no recruitment that we've had to do.
Wow, no staff turnover.
Yeah, so our retention has been 100% this year. It's been fantastic. So yeah, obviously people are happy, and also COVID as well, I get that. But yeah, people are hanging on with us for at least another year, which is fantastic. It would be literally like just getting to know them. We would talk about Penang, because Penang is quite unique in a lot of ways. We would even go down the point of asking with this is another sorry to mention him again, Ian Salis. Ian Salis would ask and it's important about whether you're looking for love, because coming to Penang, which is an island mostly with retirees, as a young single teacher, it's actually quite hard to meet other people. We're lucky enough, well, I say lucky enough, we've got more schools, but unlucky in terms of the competition, but more schools that are also recruiting younger sort of teachers. But compared to going to KL or Bangkok, where you may have a bigger expat community, if that's what you're looking for, or a wider range in terms of age groups, Penang's quite unique. So, if you're looking for a city life, that's not what you get here. It's, I quite like it. It's quite, lazy in terms of laid back, and but yeah, lots of old people. Sorry, Penang.
It's a good question, Liz. It's a good question because you are trying to find the right fit, aren't you? And if you feel as if they're going to be bored or then they're not going to be performing at their best.
That's right. Yeah.
for, isn't it? So
Yeah.
is it looking at things like what inspires you and see what lights up in their eyes when they're talking about that? Is it about what frustrates you and then seeing if they're see how their body language sort of comes across? Is that the sort of thing we're looking at when we're trying to find out about them?
Yeah, I think so. And it's also just trying to find out a little bit about them, like why Penang, why our school, sort of, that gives you good insight to see whether they've done the research in the first place, or whether it's, you know, the 15th or 16th interview, and, you know, that they're still sort of searching. But it's also about what their values are, I suppose, in terms of the learning. So maybe when was the last time you experienced new learning? How did it feel? Trying to get sort of a sense of how they would fit into our culture of learning at school and the language that we use. And then, yeah, sharing what we're about as well. And I think, you know, we're not our reputation has definitely grown in terms of Tenby, and but we're not the prestigious school that you'll find in other cities, and we're competing out there with other big schools that have got very historical reputations perhaps, and we think that our leadership style, the leaders, the people, the culture inside it is really important for us to be able to share as a selling point. You know, if you come and work at our school, you'll get a completely supportive leadership team. There'll be CPD to support your growth and your development as a teacher or as a leader. We're part of a bigger schools network group now of ISP, which is global, and we're over 50 schools, so there's opportunities further afield. So just trying to get sort of their scope on what they want to do now, but also what they want to do in 3 years, 5 years time. If you know, I didn't know that I wanted to do what I wanted to do, but, you know, other people have got something a little bit firmer in mind. And it's just about the chat, I suppose.
I think that's so underrated, that idea of the chat, because I think this brings you back around to that idea of you trying to get the best person in the role. And I think that it's often forgotten that there's a person behind the skill set, there's a person behind the essential skills, and there's a person with their own life outside the school. And I really like that idea of trying. I think I'd be really interested to hear how it's perceived by the interviewee afterwards, when the principal does pry into their private life a bit and ask about, you know, whether they're married or they're single, what are their plans around that? Why would they want to move to Penang, knowing that maybe that's an older retiree population? I think all these things are really, really relevant and so important to address. And maybe you could tell a lot from the interview's reaction of how they perceive that and whether they feel like you've crossed a professional line. I know Brené Brown talks a lot, doesn't she, about boundaries.
Yes,
she admits
that's
herself
right.
that she constantly oversteps them, and I do. I make that mistake quite often. But with the best intentions of trying to be able to provide and to support people as best they can.
Yeah.
But some people don't like that. Some people want that professional boundary and that line of, well, I'm coming here for a job. Why are you asking me about those things?
Yeah.
What kind of responses do you get?
I think it varies. I think, just sort of following on from what you've said, I think coming onto the international circuit is very different. You know, I think you've got senior leaders who are friends with middle leaders, teachers. I think it all crosses over because we're all in this like bubble together, if you like. And so there are friendships on a personal level as well as a professional level. And I think that's quite different, and I think that takes some getting used to if you're coming directly out of the UK. It's not always like that, of course, but you're a bit limited to start with until you find your feet a little bit in a new place. How people respond, some people again will laugh, and you know, you have a great chat about whether they are looking for love or not, or what, you know, a little bit more about their choices and what they are looking for. Because, you know, I came out to Kuala Lumpur, I'd never lived in a big city before, so that was quite daunting for me. And actually the first 6 months it took me, 6 months it took me to sort of get used to living in such a big city, finding my feet at school, but also finding my feet around where I was living and what I was doing. So coming to Penang, I think for some people it's easier because it's not so big and it's not so daunting, and you can, you know, walk out your front door, and there are pavements that you're not going to fall down and break a leg, you know, and you can ride your bike without being knocked off it on the highway, etc. So it's trying to find out a little bit more about them and about you. And I think an interview at that point, we decided, was that it's about them interviewing us as much as us interviewing them, and we try and make sure that that's clear. And you know, if they get to the end of that call and they think, oh no, they've delved a little bit too much into my personal life, or you know, it wasn't quite what I was expecting, then maybe it isn't the right place for them, and vice versa. But we've had some excellent recruitment, that's not the right word, is it? We have recruited really positively in the last couple of years, and yeah, people have settled in really well, and I think that change has made a positive impact in our recruitment strategy.
Yeah, I like that idea of, you know, you're showing your cards and you're saying, listen, we care about you as a person, and we are going to sort of try and find out what's happening in your personal life to support you. And like you said, I didn't see it from that angle of an interviewee then going away and thinking, well, actually that's stepping over a boundary for me. Maybe that place isn't for me. And then that's a great outcome for both the school and the person.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you want them to settle. You don't want them here just for 2 years. Hopefully they will, you know, if it's the right fit, then they'll be here for, you know, 4 years, 6 years longer potentially, which is generally what happens here, because it's such a great place. So if we find the right person, the right match.
Well, you're obviously doing an absolutely cracking job. 100% retention in an international school is just unheard of. Wow. Yeah. I was reading an article by the principal of Cloke School, who was quite active on Twitter, on LinkedIn, Mark Steed, and he was talking about how a great sort of a great turnover rate would be between 7 and 12%. Obviously, depending on the number of teachers, that number would differ, but from the size of your school to have 100% retention rate, it's clearly working. You know, investigating and stepping over maybe a few people's boundaries and trying to find out what kind of person they are is working for Tenby, and that's great. You know, that's it.
Right, Liz, we're going to start winding it down into the fun questions at the end, and I'm sure you're heavily prepared for it.
I don't know what you mean.
So your 3 leaders, Liz, anybody from past history or people you've worked with who you'd love to go out on a dinner date and you'd have a good chat? Who would they be?
Yeah, I had a good thinking time about this one. One of them came straight to mind, and then I thought, right, okay, I'm going to look into them a little bit more. So I did a bit of research as a response here. So my 3 top leaders, my first one would be Jacinda. So I've gone all female. So she, I think she's inspirational. She leads with kindness, empathy. She's not afraid to lead in this way either. And she has been commended for acting quickly. So their COVID rates of, pretty much 0, I think. They've done it really well. But she also acknowledges her team whenever she's talking about them. It's always a we, it's never an I, it's very collective with that. And that helps her connect. And I just think she's inspirational as a human being. So she would be number 1. Then I've got Michelle Obama. And I did have Barack to start with, but I switched it to Michelle. And she's just sort of created her own path, hasn't she? Behind Barack, but not behind Barack. And I think, again, just inspirational. She can motivate, she's honest. The way that she speaks to an audience is just wow. But she also stands up very much for her values. So she would be there. I think within our meeting, our table, I think she would just be hilarious as well. I think she'd have loads of great stories that she could share.
I think you chose the right Obama. From reading Michelle's and Barack's books, Michelle's definitely in charge, right?
Yes. Yeah, very captivating.
I think we testify to that, kids, and I think the wife's in charge, eh?
And then my third is Megan Rapinoe. And I sort of toyed with Abby Wambach, having read her book recently, Wolfpack, but I've gone Megan Rapinoe, just because she is just using her voice through her successes on the football pitch and she's just a big platform to be able to speak out, and she just refuses to be silenced, doesn't she? She's just, you know, her activism on equal pay within the football game, to make sure the racial justice, the LGBT that she's standing up against, and it's just fantastic. And of course, her pink hair is just making her, you know, stand out from the crowds too. That helps, doesn't it? But yeah, she's inspirational.
Well. She's a decent footballer.
Yeah. But I think, you know, she's inspiring the younger generation as well, and you know, she's out there and she's changing people's minds, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, great 3 choices. Lewis, to finish.
Tell us what you're reading. Is it any good?
Oh, okay. So I'm not actually reading anything in particular right this moment, but as I mentioned earlier, I have just finished the book that is called Standing Big by Tara Moore, I think it's called, Tara Moore. And that's all about practical wisdom for women who want to speak up, create and lead. And the book is just full of, on my Kindle, it's just full of highlights. I might as well read the book again.
Do you ever go back and read the highlights from the Kindle? Because I get in the habit of doing some really good highlights and thinking, I'll go back and read that. Never do.
I've never ever read my highlights, I'll be quite honest.
I know. Do you know what? If this carries on for another 2 years, maybe we'll get round to it.
That's why I bought that. That's why I bought that electronic scribble book, so I don't have to highlight anymore.
Yeah, it's just an adult Etch-a-Sketch, that, Alan. You need to grow up, mate.
I know. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Liz, last one to finish. If you were to have a billboard by a busy road, what would you write on the billboard?
Now, thinking about this one, this is probably my trickiest, and it's nothing original, but I've got it hanging in my office as one of my, I've got 4 like posters that I framed with quotes, and it would be work hard, play hard, be kind. And I know that's not original, but I just think that's me, that's what I think people should do.
I think that's a really nice way to sum up our conversation as well, and the journey that you've been on. You've clearly worked incredibly hard, and I presume played hard. And obviously kindness is up there. You mentioned that several times in terms of your values. Liz, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. Keep